But what is the T-Act, T-E-A Act? On the horn with us right now, Congressman Gresham Barrett. Hey, Congressman.
Rocky D., how are you, my friend?
We got somebody who wants to talk about the Great Society to begin with, but tell us, what is the T-Act? Tell us what it means.
The T-Act, the Taxpayer Empowerment Advocacy Act. It's something that we actually submitted last year. We changed the nomenclature around a little bit. We changed the title around. And, the bottom line is it saves $520 billion over 5 years. I mean, what we've seen so far, Rocky D., is too much taxing, too much borrowing, and too much spending. And what we're trying to do is bring a little common sense back into what's going on in the federal government.
How does it work? What does it do?
Well, it does a couple of things. Number one, not only does it save $520 billion over the next 5 years, it reduces spending by 5% across the board. Now, that's with the exception of Social Security and the interest, okay? It holds the level of spending to 2009. It says if you're going to grow government, it can't be greater than the rate of inflation. It tightens up the language that we use for emergency spending. If you had a hurricane or something like that was actually an emergency, it tightens up that language so you can't make a wish list for everything. And then the last thing, it reinstitutes a thing called PAYGO, which means on mandatory spending, if you're going to increase it, guess what? You have to go in the budget and cut it somewhere else. So it's a dollar-for-dollar type of thing. If you're going to increase it, you find where you're going to get the money. Just don't print it.
You find it disturbing that many of your colleagues across the aisle and maybe even sitting next to you in Congress are all for piling debt upon more debt?
You know, it's amazing. And one of the things that when we were talking about reintroducing this bill, the reason we went with the T-Act, Rocky D., is because think about what's happening all over the country. Tea parties, Boston tea parties, or tax tea parties, whatever you want to call it. And what we're trying to do is tie this back into what's happening with the American citizens, because they're finally starting to say, you know what, the federal government just doesn't get it. And what I want to tell your listeners today, and what we're going to tell people all over South Carolina and this nation, is to put a tea bag in an envelope and send it to their congressman and tell them, hey, we're fed up with this overspending, this overtaxation, and this overborrowing. Bring some fiscal sanity in there and remember what we sent you up there for.
Can you do that? I heard you can't mail a tea bag to a congressman because it won't get through the filter because of all the anthrax scare and stuff.
Send it to the local office. I know that you can send it to my local office and we'll get it. Or better yet, get somebody to collect them and somebody to drop them off in a grocery bag or garbage bags or something. I mean,
or a picture of one.
Congressmen need to understand. Congressmen and congresswomen need to understand that there is a disconnect up here from what the Democrats are pushing and what's going on in the real world. It's not about growing government. It's not about empowering the government. It's about empowering people to make a difference in this economy, Rocky D.
Is there any way to fight off the massive debt introduced by this StimuPork package? It seems it's a done deal.
Well, exactly what I'm talking about. People are – I have a lot of congressmen that when they get up here, they feel like they're in their own separate world, in their own cocoon. And too many times what they do and what they say in Washington doesn't translate back in the real world in Westminster, South Carolina, or Charleston, South Carolina. And that's why getting people empowered, getting people involved in this process to let these congressmen and women know, hey, buddy, you better watch what you're doing because we're watching back home, and when you come home to wherever it is, small town USA, you're going to have to answer to us.
The Taxpayer Empowerment and Advocacy Act. Are you
T-Act for sure.
Yeah, T-Act, right. Is it? Are you getting any notice on this? Are you getting any help?
Neil Cavuto. I'm on Neil Cavuto this afternoon. I mean, he saw it. We dropped it today, or we're going to drop it today. We're going to start pushing it not only with our Republican friends but our Democrat friends. We've got a lot of so-called blue dog moderate Democrats that say they're not for more taxing and more spending and more borrowing. Well, it's time to put your money where your mouth is, big boy.
Yeah. Well, I got to tell you, man, it sounds like a good idea, but will you get the votes? I mean, will you get support for this?
Well, it's worth the fight, and we're going to continue to fight this fight. That's what my folks from South Carolina sent me to do, and it's the right thing to do, Rocky D. Trying to empower people. We've seen the government, and supposedly today we're running this down because as I was coming over here, if you've been following it, which I know you have, and your listeners probably have too, because they're informed because of the shows they listen to. The Obama package, his tax package or his budget, is on the floor this week, and we're hearing. I just heard one of my colleagues on the way over here say that his cut to the middle class has been taken out of his budget. Now we're going back to verify that because I just heard that on the floor, but it doesn't surprise me. This budget raises taxes $2 trillion, not to include the energy tax, the cap-and-trade tax, which could be, from what I've seen, anywhere between $600 billion up to $1.7 billion. I mean, it's more taxes, it's more spending, and it's more borrowing.
We need a tax protest, man. We
Amen.
need it. We need it now. We need it right here. And one of the ways that people have been talking about doing this now is limiting the amount of money they make. In other words, make less money on purpose. Let the congressman and the president know, guess what? I'm making less money on purpose, therefore I'm sending less tax money in.
Well,
I've heard a lot of people doing this, man.
It really doesn't matter because the Congress can slap a 90% tax on whatever you want to do. I mean, how insane is that, Rocky D? That the full weight of the federal government, because the Democrats made a mistake, they said, okay, here's what we're going to do. We'll just write it. We will tax a group of citizens in the United States 90%. If that's not an abuse of power, I don't know what is.
Well, I don't like what the AIG execs did, blowing money left and right. But at the same time, it was an even scarier proposition to see the government pass legislation aimed directly at one company or at one group of folks.
Absolutely. I mean, who can withstand the full weight of the federal government? I mean, who's it going to be next time? Guys that live in Westminster or guys that do talk radio in Charleston, South Carolina? I mean,
Yeah. Hey, I fully expect some government people to come after me in one form or another. And you know what they're going to do? They're not going to use the unfairness doctrine. What they're going to do is they're going to okay citizen review boards, you see. And these citizen review boards will be staffed by left-wing racists who are just pushing a liberal agenda.
Well, the unfairness, the fairness doctrine that you were talking about, it is scary to see what could possibly happen. I mean, where does it all end? It's a scary precedent that our federal government is going down, my friend.
They can set up all the citizen review boards. Read jackbooted thugs with knives and guns. They can set them up all they want. I'm not listening to them. I will not comply. I'm stubborn. I don't have a family to worry about. I don't have kids, Gresham. I don't have, my folks are old. My brother and sister are fine on their own. And I don't have anybody but me to take care of. So I'm your soldier, bub. Let's go. Light my torches. Send me to the sound of the guns, man. I'm ready to go.
That's what's exciting about these TACs that I think, Rocky D, is people around the nation in small towns and big towns. I mean, there were 2,000 people in Greenville the other day. There were 4,000 in Cincinnati. I mean, these are people from every walk of life, from small income guys to middle businessmen or small businessmen. I mean, they're finally starting to wake up and say, if we don't take action, if we don't let somebody hear what's going on in the real world, then shame on us for what we get.
Yep. All right, Congressman Gresham, we'll talk to you another time.
Thanks, Rocky D.
Look it up, friends, man. Okay, the TEAC, T-E-A-X. See you, Congress. There you go.